I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Virginia, the distinguished ranking member of the Committee on Education and Workforce, Mr. Scott.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to H.Res. 5. This rules package contains a special provision exempting the Affordable Care Act from normal budget rules, giving the Republicans an easier path to repealing the Affordable Care Act without an alternative. The reason this exception is needed is because the regular budget process in the rule provides that when legislation is passed which increases spending, it must be paid for to avoid increasing the deficit. Obamacare actually saves money. So under the normal rule, repealing it would have to be paid for. The exception in the rule will allow for the repeal without offsetting the cost of that repeal, costing billions, possibly hundreds of billions, adding billions, possibly hundreds of billions to the deficit. And what do we get with a repeal? And by the way, when they say repeal and replace, the only thing you can be sure of is the repeal part. Because if there were a viable alternative, we would have seen what that alternative looked like sometime in the last 6 years, but we have seen nothing. But we do know what a repeal would look like. Just some of the consequences: tens of millions of people will lose insurance, employers will start dropping coverage, those with pre-existing conditions would lose coverage or be charged a lot more, loss of consumer protections. It would hurt the Medicare trust fund because the solvency of the trust fund was extended under the Affordable Care Act. That process would be reversed, billions added to the national debt, and we should not facilitate that debacle by granting this exception found in the rule, which would add billions to the deficit and jeopardize life-saving insurance company for tens of millions of hard-working Americans. We should vote no on this rule. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.